Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me in my 15-minute session on Generation After Next AI. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I really love the speakers earlier on this morning. There's an awful lot of parallel with what I'm about to discuss as well, and also if you have any questions, we do have some of our colleagues here out in the audience. If you'd like to raise your hands, please, there you go. You can go out and ask them questions as well. Okay, so Generation After Next AI. In the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about my definition of what that actually is. I'm going to talk about how we can put in foundations in order to make Generation After Next AI possible. And I'm going to share with you some insights and some learnings as well from many of the projects that we actually carry out Cambridge consultants as part of our research, as well as some of our client work. Okay, so before we talk about the future, let's have a quick look back on the past. Now, in the last 100 years, our predecessors have had a very clear idea of what AI would actually achieve for us. Asimov, many of you will have been influenced by his writings in your youth. I know he certainly impacted mine. Gave us the law of robotics. 3 laws where human safety is absolutely paramount. The great Alan Turing imagined a world where AI systems would have human intelligence and work in collaboration with humanity. And of course, Demis, co-founder of DeepMind, has recently been pushing his vision of how AI can support humanity in solving some of its greatest challenges and reaching its potential. All of these themes I find absolutely fascinating in the sense that they are very, very positive. Here we have some amazing visions of society, tech for good, AI for good for society. It's all very, very positive feeling. But the problem is, humans as we are, we also have ideas of negative outcomes. In fact, we're hardwired to that. If recent headlines, actually headlines for the last 10 years would have you believe, we are heading in for disaster. And a couple of weeks ago, there was an open letter actually printed by the Center of AI Safety, which read as following: mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks, such as pandemics and nuclear war. Now, that is actually quite frightening, but one thing you should realize when you're reading this is actually not just a warning, it's actually a call to action. And we are finally doing that. There you go. So the UK government put out this press release recently. Here in the UK, we are going to be the first to host the Global Summit on Artificial Intelligence, which will be focused on AI ethics, safety, and regulation. But at CC, we haven't been waiting for the collective momentum to gather in order to commit to action and explore what's possible. Recently, we actually put in a publication around AI assurance, protecting the next generation of business, which you should be able to find, actually, somewhere it'll be around, for you to collect. If you can't get a hold of a hard copy, do check it out on our website. In this, we've given examples of how we can apply AI assurance processes to different applications in AI in various different sectors. And this is truly important. We've talked about how AI can change society if we all collaborate together, maintain human safety. And if we actually follow the visions of our leaders in the past, these visions of AI, they actually fit in what we imagine Generation After Next AI to be. So what will Generation After Next AI give us? I'm not going to go through this list in its entirety, but I have blocked out 3 aspects that I think are super important. Because as far as I'm concerned, unless we use AI for predicting weather, being very proactive on how we also manage our biodiversity and invest in sustainable agriculture to feed a burgeoning population, the rest is not going to matter. And one of the things that did frighten me a fair few years ago, and you should take this on board, we've lost 60% of the wildlife in the last 50 years alone. It's a frightening statistic, and we all know here that man sits alongside nature and not above it. But maybe Generation After Next AI can actually help us support and address these issues. Now, before I go into the definitions of what Generation After Next AI actually looks like, You know that I'm a history fan, so I'm just going to do a quick review of where AI has brought us so far. Now, argue with me all you like, but I've just blocked them into 3 areas. Many of us are familiar with first-generation AI. It's rule-based programming. The algorithm is not learning anything from the data. We have machine learning, statistics and algorithms learning from data. Everyone remembers the first dog-cat classification. And please be meet to our dogs and cats at CC. Oh, I seem pointing. But now, currently, we're living in 3rd-generation AI. This is actually living concurrently with 2nd generation, where we are using deep learning models that mimic the human intellect, well, problem-solving intellect and neuronal architecture in order to excel at things like image classification and natural language processing. So building on these skill sets, where are we actually going? So, what you've all been waiting for. Now, these are my 5 definitions of the attributes that generation after next AI will have. Many of it will be familiar to you, actually, things that we are aspiring to move in order to move forward. First and foremost, AI will be explainable. This is clear and interpretable explanations. This is super important in terms of transparency in building trust, especially in fields like financial services, health, and autonomous systems. It's absolutely critical for acceptance and accountability. 2, contextual understanding. We all are used to using AIs that help us solve a particular problem, but in this kind of scenario, we're looking at a dynamic environment where the goals and objectives that need to be achieved will actually vary over the course of time. So here, AI will give a more nuanced and adaptable set of recommendations for any actions and goals committed to. This is super important for things like empathetic interactions between the AI and the user. 3rd, we have common sense reasoning. Many of us walk around our lives with as the sum of our experiences. We make decisions on complicated scenarios and predict outcomes very, very easily, but it's not something that AI can do right now. To be able to then take AI to hold vast amounts of general knowledge and think in terms of human beings and reasons the same way as human beings do, we can have robust and intelligent decision-making. You can imagine this scenario applying to autonomous vehicles, making a decision at a critical moment. Oh, there you go. Cognitive architectures, AI mimicking human cognitive processes. None of this is going to work unless we actually create systems that mimic us in terms of memory, attention, and problem-solving skills. If we have things like this, then we will certainly advance and accelerate our innovation in things like drug discovery, scientific research, and innovation. And finally, lifelong learning. No AI would be worth its salt if it didn't actually continue to learn throughout the duration of its implementation, maintaining its memories of experience and then adapting accordingly. So how far along are we on this journey? And in these 5 attributes, what have we actually achieved so far? The next example I'm going to show you, the left-hand side should be very, very familiar to you all. Tetris. I know some of you will have lost many hours in your childhood and adulthood to this. But this is something we call adaptive interaction. And some of our team who have helped develop this as well are amongst the crowd, so you can ask them a little bit more about it. But here, without going into too much detail, I know it's quite busy, you have an AI that is actually helping you play this game. It's looking at your facial features, your emotions essentially, and how you are playing the game in order to keep you engaged. So if you're looking bored, maybe it'll switch things over and make it a little bit more spicy. It will, increase the number of blocks coming in at a certain time. And if you're looking frustrated or cognitively overloaded, it'll ease off as well. The imperative to this is enhancing performance, essentially. So imagine a world where here you have a human working collaboration, essentially, with an AI in order to improve performance. Imagine what this could actually mean in the grander context of things. How about a surgeon in a theatre with a patient in the face of a sudden complication? What would he do if he had an AI with him? So, before I switch gears and talk about how we make all of this happen, how we make generation after next happen, one of the things I want to take away from this particular example is, in order for this to work, two things must be in place. One, there must be a natural sense of communication between the two systems. The human must actually understand what the AI is trying to achieve. Two is that there must be trust. So how do we implement trust? Earlier on, I talked about our AI assurance blueprint, and here is basically the summation of all of it on a very high level. Now, it is not something that we created in a vacuum. We've consulted with not just our clients, but multinational organizations, both private and NGOs, and OECD, the UN, and this is our blueprint for how we work with assurance in terms of our own internal projects and those with our clients. So walking through this with you, at the bottom we have human-centric design. Now that's irrespective of technology. You are essentially creating a product that's fit for purpose. It addresses the key pain points and is effective in solving whatever problem it's been designed for. The 6 pillars that you actually have here are very core to AI assurance. And if you look from left to right, what you're actually seeing is that holistic overview, that moral, ethical overview, being applied all the way down, being applied from the left-hand side, and then us moving all the way down to technical performance, where we are actually looking at the robustness, accuracy, and the resilience of algorithms. Every one of these pillars should have the concepts of accountability and explainability and sustainability attached to them. You then layer that with a wonderful intuitive interface, incorporating feedback and communication, and of course, hopefully, you have trust. So breaking this down a little bit further, now I have a pyramid here, so it's just to give you an idea of how this works from the previous plot as a top-down approach. But we have clients that come in at different levels of this, and of course we iterate through it. But let me just spend a couple of quick seconds on it. Essentially at the top, we do a risk assessment. We take the pillars that we had earlier on, and we carry out an assessment on all these various different areas. Now, depending on your AI solution, you're going to be focused on things like, say, maybe safety a little bit more, because that's more business imperative, or maybe you're looking at technical performance. We then take that and break it down into system components. So we're looking at the model, AI model life cycle. We're looking at how it interacts with other technologies within the system, and of course, how it works with human beings. And of course, this can be analyzed even further, all the way down to the chip level. We're not just looking at the algorithm, but sensors and hardware, etc. So the next couple of examples I'm going to actually show you are from some projects that we've done internally as well. And the following one is something that I absolutely love. Now, the reason I love it is because not all of the AI assurance conversations or opportunities or scenarios can actually be carried out in the real world very easily. Here at CC, we've actually been using simulation. In this example, you essentially have a vehicle in a virtual environment with a camera and some sensors looking at the environmental changes in the atmosphere. Now, you can imagine if you actually were to do that in reality, gathering that information, processing, analyzing could take weeks or months. Here, we want to check the robustness of the algorithm. And in order to do that, we can actually put in multiple different scenarios and adapt it actually in real time. And of course, if you do have some real-world data, you can validate with that. Finally, and I'm going to click this in a minute, we have one of our favorite projects as well here, and this is our collaborative drone project. So in a minute, what you can actually see is 2 drones. Okay, 2 drones trained through reinforcement learning, and what they are going to do is, between each other, there's a leader and a follower. They're going to decide how to accomplish the following task, which is actually to go through this arch. Now, you can imagine they must have several things in place. They understand their mission, how they interact with each other, how they interact with their environment, and how they communicate with their human operators. These drones are clearly an extension of their human teammates, and the things that they can accomplish are absolutely amazing. Maybe they can support in agriculture and farming and sustainability. Maybe they can help in humanitarian scenarios, such as disaster recovery. But with the AI assurance side of things, we take those various different aspects of the project, from the design and inception, how they interact with each other in accomplishing a goal, and deployment, and assess everything. And of course, whilst we had previously safety and technical performance, we do have this here in terms of an AI assurance objective. We also have legal and regulatory. How do the laws apply to this scenario? So thank you for listening to me. As we come to the end of all of this, what I want to say is that in terms of visions of generation after next, we are actually lucky and fortunate enough to be living in a time where we are realizing the visions and the ideals of our predecessors. We actually have the opportunity to make that narrative become real. And whilst, yes, there are some frightening, very, very frightening headlines out there, we do have the capacity to move and steer things in terms of AI into a more positive outcome. I've given you some insights on how I feel generation after next AI will manifest itself. And of course, I've spent some time to talk about how it would be made possible if we put the right assurance processes in place. Thank you for listening to me. If you have any further questions, do ask myself or my colleagues out there in the audience. Thank you.